I mean, I think the first thing is like, neither of us have ever been administrators.
Nope.
Neither of us have ever been leaders of a building or central office capacity, right? So I think to keep that into consideration, we're coming from a teacher perspective and even potentially a teacher leader perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came across this tweet that I thought was interesting and like needed to be unpacked.
Okay.
From that teacher perspective. It's coming from a person who has written books and has like done work to support teachers, which obviously like is something that I appreciate, but here's what it says. Iacocca once said, "I hire smart people and then I get out of their way. Admin, give this a try. Your life will be much easier when you realize you don't need to micromanage a group of professionals who know more about their job than you do anyway."
So, this comes from a person like I follow on Twitter. Says some pretty smart things. At least I think so. Knowing, like, I don't know if knowing where that comes from and where Iacocca comes from in that element, like, I don't know if it fits.
Well, I mean, I think it's troublesome to try and correlate what Iacocca was doing
versus
and what administrators of a building are doing
because
with
I would
teachers.
because I would look at what Iacocca does. But first of all, it's a paraphrase quote, like the word for word quote from Iacocca is, "I hire people brighter than me, and then I get out of their way."
Okay, so smart people versus people I know are smarter than me in certain capacities.
And I would look at,
different.
My opinion, the crossover of what Iacocca as like a CEO of Chrysler, he's hiring people that would be building administrators.
Mm-hmm.
That's how, like, to me, that's what that, like, I think that might be a great quote for admins in talking about maybe superintendents.
Okay.
Like, I've hired you to run this building. I'm not going to get in your way and tell you how to run these people. Now, could that be put in a way of like, admins hire me, don't tell me how to be a teacher? I could get on board with that. Like, I hired you to be a teacher. I'm not going to come tell you how to be a teacher day in and day out. But I think there's an element of, if I like leave them alone, like, you can't always leave people. Their job is to run a building, and if you just leave people alone, doesn't that make you kind of not great at running your building? Like, there's at times you have to intervene and you have to go, hey, I see what you're doing here. Our building needs this.
Right. Well, I mean, that's where I'm finding this problematic. Again, coming at it from a teacher perspective, being one of the people that is smart and having my administrators out of my way, I think there's a lot of times when you don't necessarily have to micromanage, but there's guidance that's needed. Whether you're the smartest person in the building or not, we're all human, and I think we all need growth. And oftentimes teachers look to so many different faces and don't know who to turn to for that leadership. So I think to tell admins, do this, get out of people's way, let them go do their thing, it could turn ugly, and people could feel abandoned versus empowered.
Sure. And there's the element too, as a person who I feel like I take initiative on my own, that can be a very frustrating thing in terms of when there's people that choose not to take initiative, and not because they can't, but it's a literal choice to go, I'm not going to be a part of this. Someone else will take care of it. And there's going to be no one to tell me that I need to be a part of this or I need to be. So then many things fall on those that take initiative, and the people that choose not to know, because an administrator is going to stay out of the way and not intervene. I don't have to take initiative. I can step away, do whatever I want, not really be a part of the team or be a part of culture, not be a part of these initiatives or anything, because no one's going to tell me that I have to.
So you're saying it could turn into kind of my stance of like lack of empowerment and lack of growth and lack of accountability, depending on the type of teacher that's being impacted by this leadership method.
And I think that
getting out of the way.
Yeah, and I think and I don't know, I didn't read Iacocca's book or anything like that, but he was given like the reins of Chrysler and hired his staff and did his thing. That's not a true statement of buildings and admins. They don't come in and get to hire an entire staff that they fit. They might hire one or two people in a school year and be able to go, I can trust them and what they're doing. Maybe I don't have to worry about them, but I definitely need to worry about these other people.
Ooh, that's a good point. The hiring.
Like if I was an admin and my first year I got to hire somebody and I got to bring in someone I really liked and worked with before, like I look at it almost like pro sports. You know, in an NFL team gets a new general manager and then they hire a head coach they've worked with and personally know. They're not worried about that head coach and what they're doing. They can worry about other elements of the thing. So if I'm an admin and I hire this one person, I brought him in from a previous work experience, I can trust in what they're doing. I might not have to check in with them at all in a given year, and I can worry about these people I didn't hire and I have question marks next to.
Right. So, okay, and I guess that brings up the layer of our lack of experience in that administrative role. Mm-hmm. Does that become, I have so many other responsibilities and things that I have to take care of because I'm trying to run this building and support not only teachers, but the students and the parents and other stakeholders. So I need to let something go, and that something becomes, potentially building up this group of professionals that he's speaking of.
In that element, doesn't that make the quote kind of pointless? Like, just knowing and seeing what administrators I work with get like thrown on their desk and shoulders. Some like the dumbest stuff that really shouldn't be their job gets thrown at them. And then on top of that, all this silly type of questions from, different needy people, whether it's parents or teachers or different staff. Like, they don't go through, like, those groups don't go through a process at all. They go straight to administration on everything. Mm-hmm. So, like, doesn't that quote kind of mean nothing? I feel like they're already looking to get stuff off of their desk, and if there's a handful of teachers I don't need to worry about on a day-to-day basis, I'm not going to, because I have this parent asking me this kind of question that should have been answered by a teacher or an auxiliary staff or something, like someone that anybody that picks up a phone on a daily basis, or I feel like they're looking for reasons to get stuff off their plate, and if they don't have to worry about 5 or 6 staff members because they're confident in their abilities, that's great. But I still think they have to push them.
Well, okay, so the micromanaging thing.
Okay.
Right? That's what this tweet, this piece of advice is leaning into, right? Realize you don't need to micromanage a group of professionals. Fine. But where I think it turns and again becomes problematic is you don't need to micromanage a group of professionals who know more about their job than you do anyway. And I think that's an unfortunate stance to not only make admin feel devalued and lack qualification in instruction. Hopefully they were once in that position at some point working with kids. So, there's things I'm learning all the time as a teacher. I know definitely not an expert in every facet of education. And I would hope the person who I'm looking to as an instructional leader, i.e. administrators, would seek out that knowledge, would hope to say, I at least know something, or I'm striving to gain knowledge and be better. To say professionals who know more about their job than you do anyway, I think that's unfair and
it's also worrisome.
A slippery slope.
Because I don't know an administrator that wasn't a teacher first. Now, because of being an administrator, they often aren't a teacher as long. I get that. So you either were given this job as an administrator because either you were this, great at the position you had and want to be a leader of adults and teachers, or you're a great leader and have shown that and have given a position of leadership. I think neither of those things should be discounted as either you are really great at being a teacher and you should be a leader of teachers, or you are such an outstanding leader that you should lead these adults. They need leadership.
Right.
Either way, you should be sharing your knowledge as a leader. Otherwise, what's the point of having the position?
So that made me think of something. Could we be horribly wrong in what we're expecting out of administration or what we're envisioning of the role? For this tweet to be problematic, it's because we're envisioning this position as someone who is leading these professionals forward.
What's your envision? What's the position of an administrator? What is their job?
That's my point. Could we be describing the role incorrectly, not knowing enough about it that...
But isn't it important for this staff to have a vision of what their leader should be? I was asked to be on interviewing committees and stuff like that. They seem to value what my input was for an admin staff member. Isn't how we view the admin important? Because that realistically, that combination of in any leadership position, if I'm the leader, if I'm the tippy top, how people view my position is kind of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I'm a building admin, isn't it kind of what my bosses expect me to do and what the people I'm supposed to be leading expect me to do? There's expectations everywhere, and somewhere in that overlap is where that position lies.
Right, but I think we both know job descriptions can evolve and devolve, and so while we maybe have worked in scenarios where instructional leadership has been prioritized, building up these professionals, knowing about content area, I'd say especially if we're going to be evaluated by our administration, that's where I find that last piece, I have an issue with it.
So, and I have an issue too. But isn't there an
knowing more about the job?
Yeah, and isn't there an element of, I think, and it being Twitter, you are limited on descriptive verbiage, but the idea that you, even with the evaluation process, you should be allowing teachers that you know are good that freedom to kind of do their thing, and they kind of get that blank check of like, I know you're good, like, do your thing. Even if it fails, I'm still marking you as a highly effective teacher because I know that about you, and I'm not going to check in on you. I'm not going to like worry about the mundane because I know you're doing good stuff. Maybe that also is where I kind of get worried, because I think, I mean, again, in describing what an admin's job is, I think it's an element of like pushing a teacher or a staff member regardless of where they're at.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I was thinking, is you were to me, the checks and balances of the teacher I don't have to keep an eye on is set up in our evaluation system. It's every other year. You get a year off as that cushion to say, you know, we've seen this work, we're expecting it to be consistent and consecutive over the years. However, it can't be, I trust that these people are smart people. I trust that I can get out of their way. I trust that I don't need to micromanage. But then it also turns into putting all the attention somewhere else and leaving those trusted teachers to do any growth that they want on their own. The time and effort put into development isn't there. You turn behind you and there's no one,
and I guess
there to support it.
I guess the only realm that leaves you to differentiate that is the term micromanage. And I think that can be used in a very broad way, and I think that can be used in a very specific way. I think some people are going to look at that definition in a very specific way, especially if they have a situation they are frustrated with and micromanaging, or in a situation where they're being micromanaged in a certain way.
It has a major negative connotation.
100%. But, you know, I don't know, micromanaging is going to look something different to everybody. I think that's then tends to be the issue. People think they're getting micromanaged, but the manager doing it doesn't think they're micromanaging. Like, that definition.
Or does it depend on the method of micromanagement? Can you do it in a way where you're still, as the leader, taking care of things in a way that you're double checking everything, but it's not as noticeable, or doesn't come off, or it doesn't frustrate the person that you're trying to manage all the little steps along the way? We could be micromanaged and not even know it. You know what I mean? Like, there could be behind the scenes things that are happening for that control of the leadership to feel like they have a hand in something, which I understand that piece too. Feeling like you're involved and invested and checking up on things.
So then so that makes me think about, what's the difference between hands-on leadership and micromanaging? Like, is hands-on leadership like welcomed micromanagement? Because you look at it as they're in the trenches with you. I know when I worked pre-teaching, when I was working in gruddier jobs and where it was hard labor and stuff like that, you really appreciate that guy, you know, that didn't have to get dirty with you as your boss getting dirty with you and stuff at some point. When I worked in a restaurant and I was washing dishes, you appreciated the executive chef that worked their way up already doing stuff, jumping in with you to help you out, you know, kind of showing that, you know, they're not too good for this stuff anymore. Sure. and being a part of it. But as soon as he does that in a different way and says, hey, this isn't clean enough, like, I'm seeing stuff coming out and, you know, you got dirty plates, some of your silverware is not clean. You got to really be on top of that. Is that poor micromanaging because he's not in it with me to show me? Maybe.
But it sounds like, you know, it's are you doing it with me, or are you saying it to me, right? Like, are you helping me clean the plates? And like, I know you're understanding this, like, laborious work too? Or are you just pointing out the faults and then you're kind of hovering above me, telling me what to do versus like, I know you're there doing it with me?
But I think people look at, like, I look at it that way. Like, if you know there's an issue in something I'm doing and you come in with me and we do it together, that's very, like, I'm going to respond to that positively.
Well, it's hugely beneficial with adult learning.
But I also know people too that if you just tell them and say, hey, you need to do this is what I'm looking for, mm-hmm. they're more open to that. And that if you came into their classroom to come show, they're not going to respond negative. They look at that as helicoptering or stuff like that.
Okay.
They want, tell me what the goal is, what am I supposed to do, but don't give me all the steps to get there. Don't give me let me figure that out because that's my job, but tell me that you want all kids to be doing this, sure. Or we have this school-wide thing to do. I'll do it, but don't tell me all the steps. And then you have other people that are like, well, if you want me to do these school-wide initiatives, you better lay out every step you want me to do to get to that end goal. So
what you just described is a coaching scenario. It's a mentorship. So I'm wondering why this is bothersome and why we're describing leadership the way that we are and putting that job description in that role is we're craving coaching. Sure. We're craving mentorship because it's not about telling the teacher what to do. It's not about, doing it for them. It's being a facilitator and allowing them to bring to the table the way they want to change, how much they want to change, what they want it to look like. So you just described 3 scenarios. It's a coach's role and could be an administrator's role to fish that out and then support the person along the way. You don't have to micromanage that, but you also don't need to get out of their way.
But for me, I think the more troublesome thing is that you're talking about the profession of teaching, and it's a one-size-fits-all declaration. If I declared that in terms of how I teach my kids, I'm going to give you this stuff and get out of your way. Okay, that might work for some of the kids,
right?
But it's not going to work for all of them. If any teacher throws out, here's the one way I do stuff, and expect everybody to get on board, or is okay with, well, some kids won't get it, whatever, and some kids will, whatever. That's like a failed idea, like to not differentiate. Some people need you in their hip pocket to get stuff going, to get motivated, kids or adults. Some don't. Some need you to get completely out of sight and out of the spotlight so I can work and do my best.
Yeah.
It's problematic with any one size fits all. You could reform that tweet into any other position, single way of leadership, and it's still problematic.
So I guess that's, I don't want to call it an issue, but it's my hang up with Twitter right now is tweets are so prevalent. They're they're meant to be quick, short, brief, and I am taking them to heart versus taking them with a grain of salt. I mean, he literally has already done some other tweets talking about what different types of teachers need. Exactly what you were just saying, that some are going to need more than others. Like, it's not an unawareness, but I when I see it, I think to myself, it was worth you typing it and hitting send or post or whatever for the world to see, whoever you're connected with, and then some, if it's retweeted or whatever, to see. I've been taking these things to heart, and it becomes kind of overwhelming, with information, but it also makes me happy, sad, and it's very emotional.
Well, and it's the issue of social media in general, when it's not a long form discussion where you can have different viewpoints and flush them out and talk about nuance and all that stuff.
Right, it's out there.
It's this tweet, so when you look at the couple thousand likes and the retweets and the comments of support, you're clearly echoing somebody that strikes a chord with. A person that thinks they're a great teacher, but also thinks they're getting micromanaged from a poor administrator, and they're going, yeah, you hear us, all of us that are in this issue.
Or an administrator who's already chosen, they're feeling validated.
Because I chose that path.
I haven't been micromanaging my teachers.
And then maybe the world's on fire.
Yeah.
It's validation. Or it's the other side. So it's social media then rears its ugly horse or ugly face when it goes, now you have people that are against that and they're just like, you don't know what you're talking about, you're awful, you're the worst. But like it gets vindictive back if they don't agree with that stance. So it's either an echo chamber of like people are like, yep, that's us, that's all teachers, and they just can blanket statement and they're happy with that because that's my problem right now.
Yeah.
My issue right now
resonates.
It doesn't matter about the policy or what it's even about, or if it's even about the teaching element. It could be just some lame BS administrative type office politics crap, and it's just I'm getting micromanaged, but I'm a great teacher and I should be just left alone to let me do my job. It strikes that chord and people get super pumped about it. Or it's like, you're dumb, like this is the worst take ever and I hate you and you're the worst and this is, I can't believe this person's even spouting this, what's their credential, like.
So you're saying the
it can't even be the issue with that is you're trying to dissect something so incredibly hard to do in 180 characters or whatever it is, and it loses all importance, nuance, conversation.
But that's kind of my point too. You only have that number of characters. This is what you want to say with it? Can I add another layer to this?
Yeah.
This is what you want to say about these professionals on June 28th, 2020, when we're learning real quick that we don't know a lot about a lot of things going on in education. We don't know a lot about how COVID is changing this entire dynamic. We don't know a lot about racial equity and the distress in education for marginalized students. Like, we aren't ready to be left alone of any time that we need support and that we need some management and some guidance. June 28th, 2020 isn't the time to tell admin to back off.
Right, and it's also that element of like, how many people might have been the exact thing they needed to hear in going into the holiday break in mid-December. Yeah. Like, man, like, leave me alone. It's been a half year. You're on my case. I'm doing some great stuff. It'll be okay. Mm-hmm. And then can easily turn around and be in this super uncertain world and go like, man, I don't even know how to, like, where to start. Mm-hmm. Don't leave me alone now.
Don't leave me alone.
And then I mean, that can cause a problematic look too. It's just like, are you sitting on the sidelines and waiting for me to speak up and say, hey, I need your help? I also don't think that's a good spot either, because then it is going to be right back to if your initial problem is you're getting a lot thrown on your plate, which I think is something everybody in education can kind of sympathize with, all the things that are thrown on your plate, trying to get stuff off your plate, then it goes back to all these squeaky wheels. Going to come with you with all these problems that probably aren't yours to solve, but they are. I'm just trying to look up, like, is there any context? Is there any, like, I started here with this tweet and built?
Maybe. I mean, I think to your point of people, like the squeaky wheel coming forward and people asking for help, here's what I'm hoping, that it's not a divided front, mm-hmm. but that we're all seeing the changes that need to take place, the desperate, like, necessary changes that need to take place going forward with, like I said, the debate on virtual and distance learning and being in the buildings and the safety, and then looking at, teaching a more anti-racist curriculum or character or whatever. I'm hoping it's this, that it's not squeaky wheels or asking for help, admins micromanage. It's not any of those, but it's that we're seen on the same team, because this type of growth, this type of change that has been building forever, it's going to need a lot of smart people, not just these smart teachers that you're hiring. It's going to need a lot of heads working together, and hearts, and people ready to move forward. And I think it's a huge endeavor.
So then maybe it's so then let's err on the other side.
Okay.
Maybe it's not a tweet really for us at all. And thinking about all those. So think about when it is, June 28th. You have all those things in your mind. You have COVID and how the fall's going to be. And some of those questions are kind of getting answered, but not really. And you talk about the cultural issues we're having right now, and the protests and uprising, and how are you going to reform your staff to be better in that realm, especially when you're a staff that doesn't necessarily mirror, the cultures of the students. So maybe it's a very specific message to administrators in this time. Hey, hire smart people right now and get out of their way. Don't hire a person that I need to invest time and energy in to put them to the level I want. It's not a time to take a chance on this person that's rough around the edges, and I think at some point they're going to be a great teacher. Now's the time to get the person that has experience in online learning. Get the person that has experience in cultural diversity and being anti-racist and all these things.
Yeah.
Now's the time to bring these smart people in your building and get the heck out of their way, because they're going to move the needle way more than you're going to try to move it with a staff that already knows you and is going to think you're just pivoting because of the time and place we're in. You could bring in to
make real change.
So maybe it's a very poignant, specific tweet for where we're at in the world, and it's like, don't mess up.
Yeah.
When you get to hire somebody, don't mess up. Don't think they'll be good enough, or they'll figure it out. We'll get them in the building. Our building culture will lift them up. You need to hire game changers and people that come in and will level up everybody else in your building.
So really, we just like the Iacocca part, not the other part.
What?
The hiring smart people.
Yeah,
right. I think, like the statement that's being made, the way that it's starting, it has good intentions, right?
100%.
It starts to pull me it pulled me in the wrong direction. But I think you might be onto something. Maybe Twitter maybe there's some interpretation involved, and like you said, it lacks nuance, it lacks conversation, it
even when
this plop.
Even when, and I'll give props to the teaching community, because it often they utilize Twitter for these chats and communication.
Yeah.
But even then, there's a lack of nuance, and it's just what's out there, and it's quick statements back and forth. You don't get to go and dig into the nitty gritty. Because I think at least when I ask for time, I know that's something that's always asked by everybody in education. We just need more time. We need more time.
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. I need time to sit down and whether it's people that teach similar subjects, similar grade levels, or just people, I respect in the game, going, okay, so what are we going to talk about? What's the issues right now? What can we go back and forth on and have different perspective, whether you're sitting with, like I said, taught areas or different or whatever. Just having perspective and talking about it really can solve problems. But, that's not what we always get, and we are in a world where we're trying to do, like many teachers are, more with less. So you utilize things like Twitter to go back and forth and connect with teachers across the world, and get, even for some people, just getting that little snippet moves the needle for them.
For sure. And even if it's something that you might deem questionable, it starts these conversations.
And I really don't think, like I said, it's a person I follow and they seem to be on the up and up when it comes to things like that. I don't think it was meant to be a tweet that like solves the problem. Like if you're an admin that like their building's on fire and they don't know what to do and they think that one tweet's going to solve their problem, they're already in a bad place. But if it's also a tweet that someone read as they go into this round of hirings and go, man, that made me think. Maybe I need to get a person that's really on top of it.
Yeah.
Now it's not the time to take maybe someone just coming out of college or someone that I'm kind of warm on but not really fired up about. Yeah. Maybe it's time to be patient and find someone super smart. Like, or that could change a lot.
Like you said from the beginning, putting your foot down on who is really, going to be best for this change and best for the building, and standing behind those hiring decisions when we know sometimes there's, politics and other things involved that can make that process difficult for an administrator.
Definitely. Well, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Okie dokie.
Well, thanks for talking.
Yeah.